English Revolution of 1688 was the culmination of England's transition from an absolute monarchy to a constitutional monarchy and rule of Parliament. Historian Lacey Baldwin Smith explains that, in England, the ancient constitution had never been king and parliament, but king in parliament. When one element of that mystical union was destroyed, the other ultimately perished. The Tudors were absolute monarchs who ruled with the support of Parliament. When the Virgin Queen Elizabeth I died without an heir, the crown was passed to the Catholic son of her cousin Mary Stuart, Queen of Scots. James VI of Scotland thus became James I of England, and thereby united the English and Scottish dynasties and introduced the Stuart line. His son Charles I's rule of economic paternalism, shady dealings, the troublesome adviser Archbishop William Laud of Canterbury, and dismissal of Parliament ended in the first regicide in modern history at the end of the English Civil War. Military leader Oliver Cromwell had led the Roundhead parliamentary forces to a successful victory against the king and his cavaliers, indeed, actually putting him on trial as a tyrant, traitor, murderer, and public enemy to the good people of this nation. But Cromwell himself, as Lord Protector, became a sort of martial monarch without traditional kingly legitimacy. When Cromwell's son proved inept to succeed him, Charles II, the French-styled son of the executed tyrant, peacefully restored the Stuart monarchy. Next in line was Charles's younger brother James II, who married the Catholic Princess Mary of Modena and was secretly Catholic himself in an era when religious denominations were at least as serious as political parties in the function of government. The eras of Civil War and Restoration and Revolution featured a host of political theorization. There was Thomas Hobbes, who believed that lusty, selfish human life is naturally solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, without the intervention of an absolute state to set things in order. There was John Milton, the blind Christian poet who envisioned the ultimate struggle against tyranny and deception in his biblical epic Paradise Lost, and also wrote political tracts favoring republicanism and freedom of speech, believing that truth will prevail when set free. There was John Locke, who thought that government's purpose was to protect creator-endowed human rights. Even Isaac Newton, renowned for his scientific discoveries of the mechanics of the universe, had daring political ideas against King James, perhaps because of his attempt to infiltrate universities with Catholic leadership. Newton wrote, "For all honest men are obliged by the laws of God and man to obey the king's lawful commands. But if his majesty be advised to require a matter which cannot be done by law, no man can suffer neglect for it." But James II believed in the divine right of kings, which posited that a king was accountable to no one but God alone, and thus, as far as his subjects were concerned, could do no wrong. A view more Greco-Roman than Christian, but some scholars attempted scriptural arguments for it regardless. James put effort into uniting Catholics and dissenters, parliamentary minorities, in his support by issuing declarations of indulgence to grant them freedom of worship and military service. But he went further, adjusting the legal system and meddling in private property by controlling college elections and wresting local government from the landed gentry. Despite their differences, members of the Whig and Tory parties were property owners, part of the ruling elite, and that kept them united against the king. When in January 1688 he finally ordered home 6 English and Scottish regiments stationed in the Netherlands, it seemed apparent that the king was preparing to ally England with France against Holland. 7 bishops, including Archbishop Sancroft, refused to read the Declaration of Indulgence James issued in May of that year because they believed the king did not have authority to suspend the operation of religious law. James promptly accused the bishops of seditious libel and locked them away in the Tower of London. When James's queen consort surprisingly gave birth to a son in June, Protestants were faced with a legitimate Catholic heir to the English throne. Yet there was one route to revolution that seemed promising. James's daughter Mary was Protestant and married to a Protestant prince in the Netherlands, William of Orange. 7 English noblemen, later nicknamed the Immortal Seven, sent through careful and cryptic disguise a letter inviting William to invade England. The letter postulates widespread discontent with their current king and even doubts that the new infant heir is really the Queen's baby. The letter was written by Henry Sidney, who later became Earl of Romney. Jewish banker Baron Francisco Lopez Suazo helped grow the Dutch military overnight by giving William a loan of 2 million guilders to finance the invasion. King Louis XIV of France miscalculated the scenario and left no help for his ally James II, who subsequently tossed the Great Seal of England into the Thames River and fled to France with his family. Having accomplished a military conquest and being the grandson of English King Charles I, William wasn't about to simply be a prince consort. Through the sovereignty of Parliament, William and Mary were crowned as joint monarchs. Honest Tom, Marquess of Wharton, a Whig in Parliament and an originator of modern political campaigning, would often remind William, "We have made you king." The Declaration of the Bill of Rights of 1689 asserted the authority of Parliament in response to a list of grievances against James II, levying money, disarming Protestants, corrupt juries, illegal and cruel punishments, etc. Principles that later appear in the American Constitution are present in this document, such as freedom of speech, petition, and bearing of arms. The Mutiny Act dealt with soldiers who remained loyal to the deposed James II, and the Act of Toleration legalized religious diversity in England, which was fitting when its own joint monarchs were diverse, Calvinist William of the Netherlands and Anglican Mary of England. During the French Revolution a century later, Monsieur Navier reflected on the glorious revolution thusly: "In securing their own happiness, Englishmen have prepared the way for the universe."